Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Yeagle again, and I'm here to read to you chapter 21 of Addison Cooke and the Tomb of the Khan. This chapter starts on page 221. It's called The Hidden Temple. The cave mouth was low and dark. After a few paces, the ceiling rose dramatically to reveal a large open cavern. Rows upon rows of Buddha statues were carved into the limestone, stacked one above the other like stadium seating. It was as if a crowd of 10-foot Buddhas was filling a movie theater. The room appeared to be a dead end. Addison was worried this was going to be a very short treasure hunt. "How many statues do you think there are?" asked Molly, taking in the strange sight. The Buddhas stared down at them impassively. 1,000, said Eddie. "It's the 1,000 Buddha caves." "I don't know," said Molly. "There are definitely a lot of Buddhas, but nowhere near 1,000. Eddie saw that she was right. "False advertising." "There are 107 Buddhas," Raj declared. "Are you just guessing?" asked Molly. Raj shook his head and quoted Sir Frederick's clue. 107 will watch over you. Pray at the one that will show you the way. "I don't see why they have the nerve to call it 1,000 Buddha caves if they only bother to put in 107 Buddhas," said Eddie. Molly saw that the statues were arranged in 9 rows of 12. She did the math. There are 108 Buddhas here, not 107. "Does that mean something?" Addison cupped an elbow in one hand and thoughtfully tapped his finger on his chin. 107 will watch over you. Pray at the one that will show you the way. One of these 108 Buddhas is not like the others. Molly stared at the crowd of statues. "So which Buddha are we looking for?" The only one at which a Templar can pray," Eddie blurted out. "Well, I got it. I know the answer." "I don't follow you," said Addison, not wishing to dampen Eddie's fire at all. But Eddie was already bounding across the floor like a Labrador after a tennis ball. He scanned the crowd of Buddhas and pointed to the 4th row, second from the end. "That one! That's the Buddha we're looking for." Addison followed his finger to the 47th Buddha. Its stone face was completely crumbled with time. It no longer even resembled a person. "That one? It's the worst Buddha of the lot. It's basically just a lump of stone." "Exactly!" Eddie insisted they take a closer look. Addison didn't have any better ideas, so Molly removed a 20-foot coil of rope from her father's survival kit, and they scaled the stone edifice level by level. Along the way, panting for breath, Eddie tried to explain his hunch. "The key is in the clue. What did Sir Frederick call this room?" "A Buddhist sanctuary," Molly answered. "Almost," said Eddie. "He called it a sanctuary for the idol worshippers of Buddha. That's the key." Addison frowned. "You've lost me, Eddie. I'm stranded at sea." "Sir Frederick is a Christian knight," Eddie tried again. "And I go to church every Sunday with my mom." Addison could follow this so far, but had no idea how Eddie was going to connect these dots to the 47th Buddha. "You memorize the 10 Commandments in Sunday school. The 2nd commandment says a Christian can't worship idols." They reached the 4th level of statues. Eddie strode along the narrow aisle, swiveling sideways each time he had to sashay past a statue. "A Christian Templar knight would be forbidden to pray at a graven image. Sir Frederick cannot pray before 107 of these Buddhas." Eddie reached the broken, crumbling, faceless Buddha and turned dramatically to address the group. "This is the only one where a Christian knight can pray." "Fine work, Eddie," Addison nodded, impressed. "Let's pray you're right." He winked and dropped to his knees. He bowed low as he had done in the Kashgar Chapel and was immediately rewarded with the sight of the Templar crest etched into the base of the rock. "Hallelujah," he said. He rose back to his feet. "Sir Frederick says this Buddha is supposed to show us the way. Any ideas?" Raj hunted for any loose brick that could pry from the base. Eddie tried pushing the Templar seal like a button. Molly checked the statue's sightline, but that simply led back out of the cave.
Mama, I went up.
Time out. Addison pushed on various parts of the Buddha, looking for a secret trigger mechanism. He tapped on the remains of the nose and the belly, and even rubbed the Buddha's bald head. Finally, more from frustration than hope, Addison gripped the Buddha in a bear hug and shoved with all his might. The entire statue swiveled on its base, revealing a staircase leading down into the mountain. Addison, caught by surprise, nearly tumbled right down the staircase. He clung to the Buddha, his feet dangling helplessly in space, before Eddie and Raj pulled him to safety by his elbows. He straightened his shirt cuffs and, after the jitters had passed, regained his sense of dignity. He examined the dust that powdered the hidden staircase. Raj, what do you make of this? Are we the first ones to enter in 800 years? Not by a long shot. Raj squatted low to the ground and indicated footprints in the sand. Well, said Molly, the cantina owner said the monks hid here from the communists. That was years ago. These footprints seem fresh. Do you think people are already inside? Molly dropped her voice to a whisper. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, said Addison. He scooped his flashlight from his messenger bag and led the way down the stone staircase to the mountain. After 2 flights, the staircase opened onto a massive arcade the size of a cathedral. Shafts of light lanced down from holes cut in the mountain, filling the hall with golden light. Addison shut off his flashlight to save the batteries. For a solid minute, the group stood with their heads craned back and their jaws dangling open. There were carved stone Buddhas everywhere. Large and small, skinny and fat, they filled the room. So this is why they call it the 1,000 Buddha Caves, Eddie breathed. Search for any place Sir Frederick might have hidden something. Addison knew he was being vague, but he had no idea how to pin things down. They'd already used up all 4 sentences of Sir Frederick's clue. He strode through the cavernous room, taking it all in. He saw the remains of cots, mattresses, cookpots, and books. This must be where the monks hid from the communists. Raj pointed to faded murals sketched on the pale rock walls. They depicted hundreds of monks hunted by soldiers as the monasteries of Mongolia burned. Think of it. All the monks who yielded their last desperate gasp of life before embracing eternity. It's a tragedy, Addison agreed. He didn't quite understand Raj's obsession with death, but somehow, in some twisted way, he felt Raj's heart was in the right place. Over here, Molly called. She waved them to the exact middle of the circular room and pointed triumphantly to a Templar symbol carved into the floor. The eye is always in the center. Addison discovered the floor tiles were not mortared to the rock. Gaining purchase with his fingertips, he and Raj were able to lever a few square tiles out of the floor, revealing a dark, gaping hole. Before they could take a vote, Molly had already taken Addison's flashlight, clamped it in her teeth, and begun climbing down into the darkness. Raj and Eddie lowered themselves in after her. Addison took one last look around the shrine and suddenly shivered, overwhelmed by the feeling of being watched. He lowered his legs into the chute and hurried after his team. He found himself in a square shaft. Wooden pegs driven into the wall allowed precarious handholds and footholds. In some places, the pegs were so sparse it was difficult to find any safe route down. In other places, the pegs were so dense it was difficult to wiggle through. Addison saw Molly's flashlight glowing some 10 feet below him. He had no idea how deep the shaft ran or how far he would plummet if his dress shoes lost their slippery grip on a wooden peg. His arm muscles were shaking with fatigue when he finally heard Molly's triumphant call, "Please don't do that," as she reached the bottom. A few more rungs, then he stretched a tentative toe south until it tapped gratefully against the rocky earth. He touched down with both feet, and then lay on his back for a minute until the world stopped spinning. Please stop making noise. By the time he sat up, Raj was already exploring the narrow tunnel ahead. Molly aimed the flashlight at a series of signs painted in several languages across the limestone wall. Addison recognized Mongolian, Chinese, and Cyrillic text. "That's a warning," Eddie read the Chinese aloud. "The Khan is guarded by ghost warriors. Turn back or face death." He weighed the 2 options. "I vote for turning back." "It said we'll face death, not that we'll die." Addison squeezed past Eddie in the narrow hallway. "We face death lots of times, Eddie." "Well, yeah, but not from ghosts." "In all history, no scientist has ever proven a haunting. Sure, but have any of those scientists conducted their experiments here in this cave in Mongolia? Under normal conditions, Addison would have argued the point, but he still felt as if he were being watched, and his memory kept conjuring images of the Mongol visions he'd seen in the past few days. He set his jaw with determination and took his flashlight back from Molly. The hallway ahead was guarded by 20-foot statues of Mongol warriors that cast long shadows in the beam of the flashlight. The signs warned us fair and square. Expect traps. Nobody touch anything. They inched forward in silence, eyes peeled for any sign of a booby trap. A quarter of the way down the hallway, Addison was beginning to feel confident. But it was halfway down the hallway that a heavy rock sailed out of the darkness and smashed only inches from his head. He ducked on instinct, splinters of rock dusting his cheek. Eddie? What did you touch? Nothing! I was getting my inhaler out of my bag. I doubt Sir Frederick wired any booby traps to my inhaler. 3 more rocks crashed to the floor inches from their feet. The team ran forward a few steps and ducked. Smashing rocks followed their progress. This is no booby trap, said Raj. The aim is too good. The rocks appeared to be coming from the stone statues, but it was impossible to know for sure in the dim glow of the flashlight. Run, said Addison. It's our only chance. The group sprinted headlong down the hallway and into the next chamber. They paused to collect their breath and their wits. What caused that? Asked Molly. The Black Dark Had? The Ghost Warriors? Addison shook his head. Something's down here with us, and we need to keep moving. He approached the next passageway, a low tunnel decorated with the carved, howling faces of ghosts. He aimed his flashlight into the gloom. Raj inspected the passage. I don't see any traps. We didn't see the last ones either. Addison stepped carefully over the white granite stone that marked the threshold. He ducked into the tunnel, Raj and Molly following close behind. Nobody touch anything. I'm looking at you, Eddie. Oh, I'm not touching anything, said Eddie, his hands in the air. Come on, Addison, give me some credit. Eddie stepped directly onto the white granite threshold rock. It sank with an ominous click. The stone door grumbled shut behind him, sealing them into the passage. To Addison's horror, the ceiling began dropping inch by inch like the clamp of a vice, threatening to crush them. Addison's feet began running of their own accord, and his upper body sailed after them. Hurry, he called. Get to the end of the tunnel. They reached the far end of the passage, only to discover that it was not, in fact, the end of the passage. The hallway took a hard left, followed by a hard right, and then just kept on going. Mama, Addison kept right on running. I want to go outside. Give me a second. Addison kept right on running, and the ceiling kept right on dropping. He found it was hard to sprint when bent double, and was soon scrambling forward on all fours. With a deafening grind, the ceiling was now only a foot from the floor. Addison dropped to his knees and elbows, crawling like a lizard for the end of the tunnel. We'll never make it, shouted Eddie. Not with that attitude, Addison gasped, squirming on his belly. The ceiling was 10 inches from the floor, then 9.